Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, so did everyone get a chance to read both the cases, I'm assuming?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm the leader. What is, so what's something you learned from the case? The note on the law of sexual harassment. And what is sexual harassment?
Let's see. Well, the legal definitions are just what we all know it actually is.
I guess we can start with the legal definition.
Well, we've got, let's see, federal law. There's classifications of it. So quid pro quo, sexual harassment, hostile work environment harassment, and then harassment by supervisors, coworkers, or non-employees.
Yeah. And so then what would you all define sexual harassment as?
I think unwanted attention or advances. Yeah.
Yeah. I like how they said like unwelcome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And trust me, it's usually unwelcome.
Yeah. Okay, so based on Martinez's story, do you think that constitutes sexual harassment?
Let's see, the Lone Star case?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, someone needs to find that dude in a parking lot with a baseball bat.
Right, I know.
Yeah.
And do you think that was quid pro quo or the hostile work environment?
Hostile work environment, for sure.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So what would be the difference? Because I think the quid pro quo, like what I got from it was that it's like sexual harassment involving something to happen, like promotion or.
Right. It's like in order to do quid pro quo, one has to be in a position of authority over the other.
Well, and that's kind of what that was in the Lone Star case, but and maybe it could be because she was like either she puts up with it or she loses her job kind of thing. And right. I don't know if there was like actual sleeping with, but he was in a position of authority over her, so I don't know.
Well, and didn't it say that for the quid pro quo that you only needed one instance to be able to file like a suit against them? Whereas in the hostile work environment, don't you need like over an extended period of time instead of just like the one scenario?
Yeah, I'm reading right now, and I think you're right.
Oh yeah.
I think it's not so much a function of time. It is you have to have repeatable events, or you have to be able to show a plural in order for a hostile work environment, as opposed to quid pro quo, which is a one-time deal. It's basically event versus lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that before.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, based on the Lone Star case, do you say that DeCoste? How do you say that name?
Which name?
The guy in the Lone Star case. DeCoste?
DeCoste?
Okay.
The E is silent. DeCoste.
DeCoste. So, do you think he received accurate advice from the council office? That he was required to talk to the EEO.
It says you're required. So yeah, well, okay. So he got legally compliant advice.
So is it under the law that he is required to say something? Because I think that under the federal law, I don't think it's required, but what I read that it might be required under the state.
Well, what she says is you're required to call out our EEO, Equal Employment Office, immediately. I'll give you the number. They'll institute an investigation. This is not a state body. This is per policy of the company, which is probably written to be in compliance with some sort of law or regulation, or it's their own personal policy. Either way, it's whatever mechanism has made that, it is a requirement.
Yeah, in the that Harvard Business School, when we read it, it says, hold on a second. Companies may be held liable for the harassing behavior of their supervisory employees. So absolutely, the company would be held liable if something were to come about. They would be the ones that would, pay the lawsuit, not the individual. So the company, in its best interest, is requiring immediate intervention.
Right, because I don't want to be held liable for that.
Yeah.
I think that is a smart policy to have, even if it's not required by law.
Right.
So I'm just kind of, I'm sorry, go ahead. I was reading forward and something caught my eye.
No,
Sorry.
go ahead.
So then he gets off the phone with the lawyer. And so then his next step is go to the woman who's crying and make her life worse, which is a stupid thing to do. So to me, it's like, kind of what was he supposed to do? He says, okay, I will now call them and I will tell them everything I know. And I will tell them that dude's name. And that's it. And you don't even feel bad. Like, if this guy didn't want his name in an investigation, maybe he shouldn't have done those things.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the sensitivity of Julia. Would you take that into consideration? Because how would it affect her?
I think he did the right thing. I don't know. In my opinion, he admitted, hey, I overheard your conversation. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I just was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I heard everything.
But that's it. It's not wrong place at the wrong time. It's,
right.
I have learned that someone is being abused. Right. What do I do to make that stop today?
Right.
That is it.
Yeah.
He didn't need to talk to Julia. He'd probably, Julia's his second stop, saying, hey, by the way, I heard this. I've reported this. There's now an investigation. Get as much documentation as you can so we can sink this guy. Like, if you're going to come in, don't say, I'm sorry, I heard this and now it's my problem. No, it's, I heard this. That's unacceptable. I've done this. Let's get the guy out. That's what actually leading is.
Yeah, he gave her a heads up, which I would appreciate. I think if I were in that situation and I knew that, something awful was going to come down. But I've never been in that situation, so I think he did the best he could in a man's capacity. It's kind of hard.
I have a sister who has been in a situation like this.
Yeah.
And she saved up her evidence, and when the time came, she executed him. He was fired from a job he'd worked out for 13 years and thought he was going to work out for the next 30. Couldn't tell his wife or his father, who also worked at the company, why he was fired. And last I heard, he got fired from Target Corporation loading their dock. So yeah.
What would you think you would have done differently then in that situation? Would you just have immediately called the officer and told them everything?
I would, if I want to be anonymous about it, because I don't know how this is going to impact me, yeah, I'll go do the anonymous thing. But it's like, when she says, oh, you have to do this, I'll give you their number. I get the number, and I say, all right, here's what I know, here's what I saw. This is the person.
Yeah.
You don't even have to give him Julia's name. I heard someone talking, didn't know what it was, but she mentioned him by name.
Yeah, I think it was right of him to call before talking to her so that, you know, he got that done and he figured out what he needed to do and he wasn't like she wasn't trying to talk him out of it before he called. But if I was in this position, I would just try to like stay out of it as much as I could. Like you were kind of saying, this is what I heard, so this is all I have to go off of. And I'm just gonna send that to someone else because it's not my job to deal with that. But
yeah, but then I got to start thinking, how many other people in this company has he done that to? How many other people is he currently doing this to? There's one, for guys doing like this, for me personally, there's one preferred option, and that's execution. If you cannot treat human beings like not your personal scratching post, and I don't care if you eat.
Right. So what do you think his options are right now?
Well, his options right now are to follow the procedure, and, you know, he makes a report, and then he has to let it out of his hands. But you want to, frankly, if I'm in that position, I am going around to every LinkedIn profile and Facebook friend he's got, and I am letting them know what he's under investigation for.
Yeah.
I did that to my own stepfather. It was really awesome. But he wasn't doing sexual harassment. He actually stole from my sister, and we happened to have video of it. So my sister uploaded the video, and then I spent an afternoon personally sending that video to every single one of his Facebook friends.
Yeah, I think DeCoste did what he was, I think, in my opinion, he went the right way, and he was trying to go about it in a way that wasn't like, you know, emotionally charged. He was trying to do it methodically and do it the right way and to cover his bases. And if I was him, I would do exactly what he did. I think just follow the procedures, get the advice that he needed, and go forward with it.
Well, isn't like right, it ended the case with him still trying to decide whether or not to call the EOC.
Yes.
Right? So he hasn't decided on that yet. And I think he got himself in a little bit of like a peer pressure type thing where you have the authority saying you have to report this, but he has Julia saying, promise me that you won't report it. And so he's got himself in this like sticky situation where I think he has to decide who he's going to be loyal to in that situation.
That's why I don't think he should have told Julie at all.
He's got to decide whether to let his emotions for the situation with Julia come out or the logical, you know, report this right now. You know, he's got his heart and his mind conflicted. But in my mind, it's completely clear what he should do. He needs to report it. You don't just sit on information like that and not report that kind of stuff. Even if emotionally it's devastating to the victim, you know, you can't just let that slide.
Yeah, and that's another emotionally devastating thing to the victim. Now someone knows and still nothing changes.
Yeah. Well, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think he needs to take into consideration the negative repercussions that could be on his own position in the company. Because if the company finds out that he knew about it and he didn't report it, he's going to be affected negatively, and it could put his job on the line. And so I think he needs to take that into consideration as well.
Yeah, it reminds me of how bishops are counseled to deal with stuff like this. They can't just, you know, ignore it. They have to report it. They are legally bound, and they have lawyers, you know, hotlines to call to get legal advice, and they have a wealth of resources to tap into. They just have to, you know, do that. They have to decide to not just let it slide and not report it, because bishops can get in big trouble if they don't.
Do you think DaCosta has any other options besides report it to the equal opportunity officer or do nothing? Is there anything in between he could do or beyond that?
There's some stupid things he could do. Like, you know, tell Julia's husband.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Sit down with French and try to like hey dude, what are you doing? Those would be kind of dumb. But as far as smart decisions, I haven't seen any. I don't know.
Right. I thought that was interesting that at the end he sat down with that guy and, you know, what do you do when you have kind of a friendly relationship with a coworker and then you find something out about them? Do you just say, we're done being friends? How would you handle that?
I think I work on making his crimes public, and then I ain't got to say nothing. It's very obvious why I will never speak to you again.
Yeah. You just bring it up.
Oh no, you wait until he's been fired. And then you just don't ever talk to him again. You unfriend him on LinkedIn. And you don't take his calls. Like, what is he possibly calling you for? Hey, did you hear how I was unjustly thrown out of a job for terrorizing innocent human beings? Like, how does that conversation go? You have no need for him.
Yeah.
Clearly, Julie is getting it on both ends, too. Sorry, I can't let my husband know about something that's bothering me because he might rack up a felony. Yeah, I'm sure he's got anger management issues.
Well, and I think it would be different if the situation was different. Because if you just heard it like down the grapevine that so-and-so's been accused of this, I think you, in some ways, have to give them the benefit of the doubt until the evidence is proved against them. Because you don't want to get all upset at someone and then find out that it was a false accusation. But in this case, it's different. But in other scenarios, I think if the situation was different from this one, making sure to wait until all the facts are there before we, I guess, cut off that relationship.
Most abusers don't leave proof. If they are competent at all, abusers don't leave proof. So we're going to let the craftiness of abusers decide whether or not we take these things seriously. That hasn't really worked well for family court.
In a leadership position, like the elder Bed and our talk, we have to focus on outcomes and be led by the Spirit. And so, in that kind of situation, absolutely, if I was in a leadership position like that, I would pray about it and go with what I felt prompted to do, which may not be any of these suggestions we've talked about. But I think, Olivia, you've got, we aren't the judges for that. We don't know everything that happened, but we can do our part to make sure that our bases are covered and we've tried our best to do what was right. So legally and all other aspects, we're absolved of responsibility, and the cards will fall wherever they will, for the victim and the accuser. And having dealt with many family members who have addiction and addictive behaviors and have made stupid choices in their life, there's a lot more than the actions of these abusers and these addicts that remains unseen. A lot of times we see their worst, but there is hope, I think, for them. And so maybe as if I don't know, I've done the ARP meetings for years, and that may be something that I think French could benefit from. He's obviously has some tendencies for a sexual addiction there and could use some help, because if he's acting out at work, there's a lot of underlying things going on in his life, and which are probably addictive behaviors that he is kind of lost control of. And so, as a friend, if I was, and it sounds like DeCosta's his friend, I would, approach and say, hey, dude, you've got some problems, you need help. You're going to lose your job and get some help.
See, like, there's a lot of people in my family, but instead of addictions, they're predators. And so my training has to deal with dispatching predators and abusers. And the MO I have to operate under is the first shot that the predator is aware is being taken should be the one that kills them. If you shoot at the king, don't miss. Which means if you've got someone in a position of power, the first time they realize that their victim has gone public should be the moment they are led from the building in handcuffs. And until you can guarantee that level of safety for victims, they will not report. Because that's what they're thinking. Can you protect me starting this moment in this room right now from that person forever? No, I will not talk. That is the mentality that people are dealing with. So when you go after predators, you don't approach them. You don't talk. You don't say, hey, we need to work something out. No, the first shot is the execution.
So since I think we all agree that we should report, I'm going to ask some questions based off of that. So do you, let me see this. Okay, so if you say she won't get fired because retaliation is illegal, do we all agree on that? That she wouldn't get fired from this?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
What proof does she have of harassment then?
And that's tough because all the stuff that she says.
Is it just word? It's just word of mouth.
Yeah. How do you get proof of somebody brushing up against you in the hallway or looking at you unless you've got a camera? And maybe that's what she needs to do, is to, to turn on a voice recording or something while he's near. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough one.
Yeah, I'm like, that might go through my head. If it might, I don't know, if I was being harassed, that I would want some proof of it before I tried. But from her point of view, she didn't want to say anything. So, but I think I would try to get some proof just to be sure, because otherwise it's just you going against him. And like they were saying, if he brought in DaCosta as a witness, then where would his place be in all this? Would he, because he doesn't have any proof, he didn't see that happen to Julia, so can he really, does his testimony matter as much?
I mean, you could always say the obvious. Yeah, this woman's got plenty of reason to lie. She's alone in her office at 7:30 in the morning crying on the phone with her sister. I'm sure she's telling a falsehood. You can look at context. She didn't jump up on a soapbox at the company Christmas party and say, this guy gropes me. No.
Or like give me money for it or something,
Yeah. So I mean, you can go like I'm thinking of like I'm thinking about like what he actually heard. It's like it's getting worse. His comments. He's trying to rise. Okay, so in the hall or the elevator. All right, are there cameras in the elevator that the company maintains?